In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro offered a balance of the base assemblies ahead of the Constituent Congress of the Working Class, where he highlighted the workers' leading role in the construction of the nation. The Honduran armed forces began distributing material for the November 30th general elections in the country. And Mexico celebrates the 115th anniversary of the start of the Mexican Revolution with a grand civil-military parade in the capital city. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro offered a balance of the base assemblies ahead of the Constituent Congress of the Working Class, where he highlighted the workers' leading role in the construction of the nation. During the balance session, the head of state, Nicolas Maduro, emphasized that more than 10,000 base assemblies of the labor movement have been held and more than 30,000 delegates have been elected. Furthermore, the president emphasized the need to consolidate the political, military and organizational power of the movement with the aim of strengthening its capacity for action and national leadership. On the other hand, the head of state also highlighted that the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, projects an economic growth of 6% of Venezuela's GDP, which reaffirms the sovereignty and strength of the country's real economy despite the blockade and aggression by the U.S. government.
It creates solutions, it creates proposals, and it is a vital force in the new economy of the 13 engines that the country is driving forward. This year, Oxford Economics and CELAC are projecting economic growth of 6% of the country's real gross domestic product. Economists call it gross domestic product. Not because it is gross, the product, but because it is internal to the global economy. When one speaks of the concept of gross domestic product, one is speaking of the entire economy. Last year it grew by 9%. We have had 18 consecutive quarters of growth.
The Venezuelan president also announced that the Bolivarian nation has increased its gas production and affirmed that the first export of that industry to Colombia is ready.
To increase gas production, we are making so much progress in the production of gas that the first export to Colombia is ready. It's at the border waiting for some technical issues to be solved so that Venezuela can begin selling gas to Colombia. Keep that secret for me too. The gas is ready at the border to be sent to Colombia. Some technical and economic elements are still needed, and then the gas will be ready to go. That will be our first shipment of gas, and then we won't stop because Colombia and Venezuela must be united, increasingly united in an increasingly integrated and prosperous economy. With a growing trade, as we already have with our growing binational investments, Venezuela and Colombia must be united in Bolivar's idea of emancipation, freedom, peace, and mutual respect between governments and peoples.
And we stay in Venezuela. The Executive Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, reaffirmed her government's stance on national sovereignty. She emphasized that political power resides in the people and will not be handed over. The vice president assured that the Venezuelan people would not surrender their freedom or sovereignty in the face of the mobilization of U.S. warships in the Caribbean. Rodriguez also highlighted that the country is experiencing a historic uprising and that the Venezuelan people will not yield to any foreign pressure or intimidation. In this regard, she praised the courage of President Nicolas Maduro and the cohesion of the people in defending the dignity and historical legacy of the nation.
Y vive hoy Venezuela.
And live today, Venezuela I am not talking about dangerous times, no. I am talking about times of historical decision, of historical insurgents, so that they know that this people will not surrender.
No se rinde, de que este pueblo no es chantajeable, de que este pueblo no lo pueden
That this people
extorsionar.
cannot be blackmailed, that this people cannot be extorted, and that President Nicolas Maduro has taught lessons from his modesty, from his humility,
Desde su humildad, pero desde su profunda valentía, ha dado lecciones de que aquí no se entrega a nadie.
but from his deep courage, he has taught us that no one here will surrender, that we are a people united in solidarity, defending our historical dignity, defending our morals, defending Bolivar, fighting to leave us an independent homeland.
Para heredarnos.
Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez also emphasized that the current imposition of the Monroe Doctrine, exemplified by the U.S. military intervention in Latin American countries, highlights its historical contradiction.
Lo que ha sido desde
What has
entonces
been since then is the contradiction with the Monroe Doctrine, but it is what is in force at this moment, to try to impose that we are their playing field, that we are the playing field of the United States where they can do as they please.
que somos su pateadero, que somos el pateadero de los Estados Unidos, donde ellos pueden hacer y deshacer.
I don't know if you saw any news yesterday that I found laughable, but that evidences this historical contradiction, where the United States Department of War puts up signs on a beach in
El
Mexico,
Departamento de Guerra de los Estados Unidos pone unos avisos en unas playas de México donde dice que está prohibido
saying that it is prohibited to swim at the beach because it is a U.S. Department of War space in Mexico. That is the concept, the Monroe Doctrine, that they are trying to impose again by force.
tratan de imponer nuevamente por la fuerza.
The Bolivarian National Armed Forces began the second phase of the electoral operation in preparation for the fourth public consultation to guarantee and protect the process. The authorities of the regions and strategic zones of integral defense initiated the deployment in a civic, military and police union to guarantee the consultation process. The deployment is in defense of the political right of citizens in accordance with and respecting the Constitution so that they may choose their projects in the fourth public consultation to address the needs of the communities. The commander of the Eastern Strategic Region of Integral Defense, Major General Juan Zulbarán, affirmed that they are prepared to guarantee suffrage during the consultation.
La operación consta de tres fases bien definidas.
The
Preelectoral,
operation consists of three well-defined phases: the pre-election, the election day, and the post-election. At this time, with this deployment underway, we are beginning the second phase, known as the election day phase, which includes 5 main events: deployment of election materials, taking over voting centers, setting up polling stations, voting, and withdrawal. We are prepared and ready to fulfill our mission, in which we will guarantee the voting rights of community members over the age of 15, as the highest expression of sovereignty and democracy during the exercise of free universal, direct, and secret voting.
el ejercicio del voto ciudadano, libre, universal.
We stay in Venezuela. The authorities also inaugurated Thursday in the state of Portuguesa the Technical Tactical Training Center for Risk and Disaster Management and Civil Protection. The ceremony was presided over by the nation's Ministry of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, in the context of the 24th anniversary of the creation of the National Directorate for Civil Protection and Disaster Management. Cabello highlighted that after their training, the cadets will be incorporated into the National Peace Quadrant structure. He also urged the creation of local contingency plans for possible emergencies through the deployment and development of a risk map using information provided by the local residents of each place.
Centinelas permanentes de la patria, amigos de nuestro pueblo.
Permanent guardians of the homeland, friends of our people. This is one of the battles we want to fight, brother governor. The people need to feel that when they see a guard officer, when they see a police officer, when they see a firefighter or a civil protection official, they know that they are their friends, that they are the people, that when they are driving by and see them, they should feel that they are the people who care for them, who protect them, who help them. And that is what the role of a public official, of a public servant, should be, because otherwise, it makes no sense to be a servant. We must constantly honor the firefighters and civil protection officials, because they are subject every day of their lives to various situations. Yesterday there was a fire in the east at the Petro-Chetinio refinery, and OD called me and told me they were waiting for the protocol, and as soon as they had the go-ahead, they will go in and do what they have to do.
Apenas ellos nos indiquen, nos metemos nosotros. Y se meten los que saben.
And from Iran, student movements mobilized on Thursday in support of Venezuela in the face of the ongoing aggressions perpetrated against it by the government of the United States. Under the slogan, Hands Off Venezuela, the demonstration called by the Islamic Association of Students of the University of Tehran condemned Washington's policies against Caracas. This way, students mobilized in the capital Tehran in front of the Swiss embassy and the U.S. interest section. The rally joins the demonstrations of support for Venezuela coming from the Persian nation as the country's top authorities have repeatedly condemned the U.S. military deployment in Caribbean waters, warned about its dangerous repercussions for international peace and security, and called for respecting Venezuela's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Also, groups of activists in the United States held a day of action in front of the State Department's office in New York to demand that the Trump administration takes its hands off Venezuela. The protesters expressed their solidarity with the South American country and rejected the militarization of U.S. cities, Washington's anti-immigrant policies, and discrimination against vulnerable communities. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Honduran Armed Forces began distributing material for the November 30th general elections in the country. According to the Chief of Joint Staff of the Armed Forces, Major General Roosevelt Hernandez, the institution is at the disposal of the National Electoral Council to assist with the organization of the elections. He also assured that the deployment will have the necessary resources to guarantee the timely and safe arrival of materials to each department and thereby provide the population with confidence. Hernandez indicated that after the polls closed, the armed forces will implement the necessary strategies to guarantee their safe return to Tegucigalpa in order to ensure respect for the will of the people and the proper delivery of the material to the electoral authorities. Also, Mexico celebrates the 115th anniversary of the start of the Mexican Revolution with a grand civil-military parade in the capital city. Armed forces contingents gathered in the capital's Zócalo, from where they departed for the monument to the revolution. November 20th, let's recall, is one of the most significant civic dates for all that transformed the political, economic, and social structures of the Aztec country. President Claudia Sheinbaum led the event and celebrated the date by recalling the country's achievements.
Mexico is experiencing a moment that once seemed impossible. Today, power is no longer used to subdue, but to serve. There are no longer impositions or privileges. There is a constitution, there is democracy, and there is a government that listens, respects, and responds to its people. Today, freedoms are not only granted from above, they are exercised from below, from every neighborhood, from every community, from every voice that speaks with dignity.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also emphasized on Thursday that today Mexico is a land of freedom and equality without special privileges.
Because in Mexico no one is silenced anymore, no one is persecuted for thinking differently, and that is an achievement of the people in Mexico today.
El gobierno dejó de ser un espacio reservado para unos cuantos.
The government is no longer a space reserved for a few, it is no longer a club for the privileged. Today it represents everyone and everyone who studies, who works, merchants,
A los comerciantes, a los jóvenes, a los indígenas, a las mujeres.
young people, indigenous people, women, but above all, it represents those who have less, the humble, so that they can achieve their well-being.
Now we go to Argentina. More than 276,000 production-related jobs have been cut in Argentina since President Javier Milei took office. The information was provided by a study conducted by the Center for Argentine Political Economy, CEPA, which covered the period from November 2023 until August 2025. The report shows a contraction in formal employment, the closure of 19,164 companies, and a decrease in the number of workers employed in productive units by 276,624, representing an average of more than 432 jobs lost per day. The report concludes that smaller companies with up to 500 employees accounted for the majority of closures, representing 99.63% of the companies lost. In other information, in Ecuador's prisons, nearly 10 inmates were found dead from tuberculosis. The bodies were found in the Littoral Penitentiary in the city of Guayaquil, where in early November the death of 8 other inmates was recorded. They had died on different dates and were found with physical deterioration and other conditions. In March 2025, Ecuador experienced an outbreak of tuberculosis where in 12 out of 30 prisons, about 1,115 cases of infections were recorded. Now we have a second show break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. On a show break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. The Palestinian resistance movement Hamas has denounced Israel's violation of the ceasefire following the massacres in Gaza and Khan Yunis. Hamas condemned the massacre perpetrated by the Israeli occupation in the cities of Gaza and Khan Yunis, which resulted in the assassination of 33 Palestinians, including 12 children and 8 women. In this regard, the resistance movement held the Zionist entity responsible for violating the ceasefire agreement by killing and injuring civilians. Hamas described the massacre as a dangerous escalation with which the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seeks to resume the genocide against the Palestinian people. In addition to mentioning the ongoing policy of demolition and destruction of homes, as well as the closure of the Rafah border crossing. The roadmap project promoted by Brazil against fossil fuels gained support at COP30 after President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva's return to the summit. The plan could become one of the concrete actions of this edition of the world's most important climate conference, which is why it was included in the draft final decision of COP30. In the final draft, it also addressed the elimination of fossil fuel subsidies, urging countries to work together to phase out inefficient subsidies that do not address energy poverty or just transitions. With the return of President Lula da Silva to Belém, COP30 enters its final stretch, and it is hoped that with the President's political skills, the program will be finally approved. Now we go to Cuba. The authorities carried out an inspection of the settlements affected in Santiago de Cuba after the passage of Hurricane Melissa. The provincial authorities, accompanied by Julio Cesar Garcia, member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, reached the localities of Cayo Granma and Caracoles. The main objective of the visit was to interact directly with the residents who were affected after the passage of Melissa and to learn about their needs. In the communities, the residents say that despite the situation, they have remained united and have shown strong solidarity, helping the most vulnerable neighbors and contributing to the recovery of the devastated areas. In this sense, for the fourth consecutive week, President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez returned to Santiago to check on the restoration work. During the supervision, he was accompanied by vice prime ministers, and also political and governmental authorities of the eastern province. The president traveled to the village of Banao, located about 60 kilometers from the capital city, to evaluate the damage and also rehabilitation work, especially on damaged homes and roads. There were intense penetrations of the sea, winds, and flooding as well. And now in other information, but staying in Cuba, the island is stepping up its efforts to combat the spread of chikungunya and other arboviruses due to high transmission rates in at least 40 countries worldwide. The Ministry of Public Health, MINSAP, reported outbreaks of chikungunya and oropouche in Cuba, viruses transmitted by mosquitoes and sandflies, which cause intense fever, joint pain, and in some cases death. MINSAP officials said that the appearance and spread of the virus is due to global factors such as climate change, in addition to the high level of urbanization that exists both worldwide and in Cuba. They also emphasized that they are following the working model of the COVID-19 pandemic, but with new products, the clinical studies, trials with health interventions, and also will focus on the elderly and children under the age of 4. And after this information, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. We also invite you to join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.